This is, in fact, Words for Birds, perhaps the oldest or one of the oldest of the National Poetry Month in San Antonio events. We've been doing this for over 10 years. Last year, thanks to Marisol, we were in a small book because we couldn't gather. This year we had this. Next year, I hope you are all with us out here at Mitchell Lake because it is beautiful and because we celebrate it. Or if not just here, then at a number of sites around the city. But basically, this is a great place and we want you to know of it. So National Poetry Month would not be possible without the great support of the of the City of San Antonio's Department of Arts and Culture. They are a remarkable partner and they help us in many ways. And I actually think there are a few more events on the calendar. So if you have not gone to www.sanantonio.gov/arts to the National Poetry Month calendar, you should. I think there are 2 or 3 more events. There's also the list of all of the new books this year that people have published, which is kind of exciting. So the sponsors for Words for Birds this year, a broader range of sponsors, are Mitchell Lake Audubon Center, Stone and Stream, Roca and El Rio, and Deceleration. And I don't think we could have done this without all 3 sponsors, and we're very, very thankful. Okay. I'm Jim LaVilla-Havelin. I think you knew that. I'm the coordinator of National Poetry Month. And I'll be very honest. I started Words for Birds out here because I wanted an event somewhat nearer to my house. I do a lot of coming into town for National Poetry Month. So I'm going to read a tiny bit, and then our first reader will be Alexandra. And when you are not reading, please mute yourself. So Terry Tempest Williams' book, When Women Were Birds, is a book about her mother and her mother's diaries, a remarkable book. There's a quote at the beginning from St. John Perse. He says, "Birds, birds, behold them alarmed, armed for action like daughters of the spirit. On the white page with infinite margins, the space they measure is all incantation." And near the end of the book, as Terry is coming to grips with her mother's passing and the reading of her mother's journals, she writes, "Once upon a time when women were birds, there was a simple understanding that to sing at dawn and to sing at dusk was to heal the world through joy. The birds still remember what we have forgotten, that the world is meant to be celebrated." When Women Were Birds by Terry Tempest Williams. I expect that one of our readers, D. Ellis Phelps, may mention Purifying Wind, the lovely, gorgeous Vulture anthology that she put together. But I'm going to read a poem of mine from there. This is called Fast Work. A convocation of vultures has the dead dog picked over on the side of the road in the time it takes me to stop at the store for cat food and the Sunday paper. Almost nothing left to scrap over. They huddle stiff and pleased with themselves on the roadside in the odor of rotting. Actually, I want to read the other as well. V is for. in part because it mentions Robinson Jeffers' fine poem Enskyment, which I was at a reading, Dee was there, and Josh Robbins was there, and we heard the Jeffers poem, we remembered it, we went back to it, and we said, someone should do an anthology of Vulture poems. Nice that there is a D. Ellis Phelps in the world to create such things, to hear the word and go ahead and do it. So thank you, dear. V is for. Before an afternoon of salutations to the vulture, paeans to those who claim the dead for more than their service, adjustments to an unjust anxiousness, all the way to Jeffers' astonished enskyment. I saw a vulture poised on a fence post above the barbs, look, limber, and unlock his wings in a gesture of salute, of presence. Can a vulture crow, announce itself to the watching world, proclaim cocksure, or was this one especially prescient, more than present, knowing there was from poets living and dead praise to come before the day died? And one more, a tiny little poem of new vintage. I'm so thrilled the Catalegrids are back, but I won't. I've read the Catalegrid poems 1,000 times. This is just a tiny learning from the birds. Squirrel scrunches down atop the bird feeder, perhaps to look a little more like a bird. Doesn't fool me. He takes his time, nibbles with no concern, is full of himself. Below the feeder and on the branches, birds flutter and chirp, patient. They wait him out. So our first reader is Alexandra Vanderkamp.
So do I begin, Jim? Okay. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I love this idea of words for birds. And I'm sure I'm not alone in this, but the pandemic had me looking at birds a lot. So I found them kind of occupying my poems in interesting and different ways. I'm going to read two poems today. One poem is more overtly filled with birds. The other poem has the absence of birds commented on in it. So birds find their ways into my poems in different ways. They fly in and out of them. Okay. So believe it or not, I wrote my first ghazal this summer, and it's having to do with birds. It's called Ghazal with Birds and Breath. And it begins with a small quote by the amazing Danish poet Ingrid Christensen. And here's the quote. Just the body sparingly lit by its uncertain promise. Ghazal with birds and breath. These hands, fiddles of flesh tumbling over the ledge of this spring day. This moment packed with small birds and noon light sidling up my legs as if I'd signed a lifetime contract with it. Today, I count my breath in the bird, not bird of each passing second. A whimsical but consistent abacus. I'm learning to name things more diligently, that there is no small crevice between wince and flinch, that safe can be a small bird whose throb of throat drowns fear momentarily from a humid world. I'm learning to be less deceived by the shapes of things. The male cardinal is blood vessel red. Yesterday evening, one mate chirped for the other so persistently it reduced the hour to the where are you, of two lonely birds. The breath, flimsy lasso tethering us to each second, soundbite of oxygen and despair, exhale of beer, cilantro, morning coffee. Breath, do you know how ghostly you are? By ghostly, I mean almost not here. I mean small birds have been breathing much longer than we have. I mean my veins are a tenuous garden. I suspect this is why the monotony of small birds comforts me as they dot the azaleas, live oaks, and crumpled fences. We are more certain of ourselves than we should be. Plots unfold around us and we barely notice. A mockingbird's spotted, thumb sized eggs are being snatched by a squirrel as I type these words. I've heard a crow can remember a human's face for 3 years. A body is a trembling, a fragile nest of cells, snapshots of family reunions, the powder blue of my mother's, hydrangeas. To keep going, I follow the delicate equation a small bird is. Vandekamp, what will you do with your name's allotment of land, its scattering of birds and breath, these hands? First guzzle, everybody. And then this is a poem that's kind of about writing and about birds and birds not quite being as present as I would like them to be as I was writing the poem. So it's called Writing Exercise with No Birds in It. I'm starved for some words today, rounded and ridged morsels like the tender glazed donut I placed into my mouth a few hours ago, puffy breathing fist that slowly dissolved. Each day lengthens its hyphenated list of partial pleasures, red charcoal wine swiveled in a glass, a vulnerable ruby ocean I shatter as I swallow. Then the abacus of anxiety counts its oily, threadbare beads inside me. I read about angels in a dead poet's poem. She died on a Sunday. Hers is a sullen one who smokes Luckies, but he sticks around like a street smart kid with a crush, shadowing her solitary life. Mine, she'd have bruised wings, a hesitant creaking of cartilage wafting about her. When in the mood, she'd look up unknown words in her dictionary with its blue, battered spine. Magical, cordgrass. World news growls on like a six-cylinder muscle car. I read more, confuse grenadiers with grenadine, and toss pomegranate grenades through light flickered fields where a syllable can detonate into its own flush silence. Give me a few recipes for a smidgen of poise and peace of mind. Shall I study the absence of birds this afternoon and the whispery dimples of regret they leave behind? The trees like detectives on a stakeout, hoping to solve the week's unnamed crime. We are what we imagine ourselves to be, but only some of the time. That's it. Thank you so much for letting me read.
Thank you, thank you. Beautiful work. And you got smidgen into a poem. You beat
Yes.
me to it. It was on my list of words to get into a poem, and you beat me to it. Terrible. Our second reader.
Thanks, Jim.
Lovely. Our second reader is D. Ellis Phelps of Purifying Wind and many more anthologies and her own work. No need to introduce beyond that. D. Ellis Phelps.
Hello. Can everyone hear me okay? Yes, thank you. good. Alexandra, I thoroughly enjoyed your poems, and there are about 15 or 20 lines that I would have just typed in real quick to the chat and said, that's lovely. But I don't type that fast. I can't think that away. I don't multitask at all. It's a real ugly thing. So just know that I would love to see those in print so that I can digest them more fully. Thank you for sharing. Jim, thank you so much for organizing this, and Marisol as well. You are all amazing heroes in my book. And hello to everyone, Jean that I know, and Marisol, and Jen, and Patricia, and Mobi, and everybody I know, and everybody, Norma, and Kamala, and Jeanie, everybody I don't know too. So good to see you all. In the chat right now, I'm going to put a call for submissions. And I'm working on a new anthology in collaboration with the Patrick Heath Public Library of Bernie. It's going to be a soft-bound cover published by that library and available on Amazon at some point. And the deadline is June the 1st. And there is the link. I hope you will all consider submitting. The deadline is June the 1st, and the subject is miracles. Milagros, everyday miracles is the working title. And so I really hope you will consider making a submission. That's a book I'm editing. So this is Purifying Wind, Jim mentioned, and I'm going to be reading from Purifying Wind. Several of you are published in here. It came out in 2020, just around October, I think. And I haven't had the opportunity to have a reading from it. You know why? We haven't organized a Zoom one, but we might. But I thought Words for Birds was the perfect place to read from it. After I read, I'll put the link for the book into the chat if you're interested in owning a copy or gifting a copy to a bird lover or a vulture culture person. So the first poem I'm going to read is by Jean Ryan. It's called The Natural Order. 4 times now, I have driven past a shrinking heap of long black feathers. Unmistakably vulture, apparently untouched. These birds do not readily eat their own, preferring the sweet meat of herbivores, though on lean days, they'll consume almost anything giving off the gas of death, which they can smell from their circles in the sky. Not keen on killing, they will wait out their dinner, keep a dark eye on the faltering. Fresh bodies are best, but rotting corpses are welcome too. A lucky break for the rest of us. Imagine a landscape with no cleanup crews. The bird on the road must have died quickly, misjudging perhaps the speed of a semi. I once saw a hawk make that mistake, a sight that left me shaken, afraid for us all. Keeping her hidden tally, nature allows for senseless things, even a bit of waste now and then. Like a bird no others will eat, as if lines must be drawn somewhere. And this poem is by our San Antonio very own Chris Billings. I don't think he's here today, but here's his poem. It's called Carry On, Bird. Carry on meaning flesh, dead flesh. And he uses the words carry on, meaning move on, go ahead, also in his work. Carry on, bird, ride the thermals to great heights. Seek your prize with keen eyes and smell. Soar gracefully in your clumsy style, but soar. Soar, you misunderstood of scavengers, you misjudged janitor of the roadside, you falsely feared bone picker of the fields. Soar, above the repulsed below. Ignore their ignorance. Reject your reputation as a grotesque thing. Soar, for you are no harbinger of death. You are merely reliant on it to live. You are no omen of bad tidings, but a sign that life goes on. You are no misplaced creature, but a proof. All creatures have a place. I'm going to read that line again. All creatures have a place in the grand scheme. Soar, you beautiful ugly. Soar the skies above, search the ground below, eat your fill of carcass and roadkill, and carry on, bird, carry on. And the last one is a little short one by Lawrence Musgrove called Wings Sutra. On this hot Sunday, I told the Buddha about our morning walk around the neighborhood. Marie Claire and I saw a Cooper's hawk perched high on a bare branch of a withering pecan. We paused to point, and suddenly he dropped, swooping in a slow loop around us. As he swung back up to his top spot, I said, I think we just received his blessing. Higher up in the blue, a batch of buzzards circled, rising on a column of simmering air. What a feeling that must be, I said, to soar so effortlessly without a care. Ah, you bet there's effort, said the Buddha. It's not that easy to turn stillness into flight. So there you have it. Thank you all for listening very much.
Beautiful. And I see that Jeanie is here too. So we are our full number. Recall, 6 minutes is what you have so that we don't over extend ourselves, or I'll fall backwards into the green and you'll never see me again. Uh-oh. Our next reader is young Ms. Victoria Lewis, who we are all excited to hear.
My name is Victoria. I am 7 years old and I am in 2nd grade. Birds. Birds chirp words. So long a song, loud and proud, fly and cry. We need birds 'cause they chirp words. Lots of birds chirp words. Like a cardinal, it is a beautiful red, and it is fast, and that is a survival instinct. All birds chirp words, loud and proud, fly and cry.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Bravo, bravo. Your first public reading in 2nd grade. You're ahead of all of us. Bravo. Lovely, lovely, lovely. And we look forward to seeing you in Young Pegasus. And we look forward to seeing your work on Via buses if we get there again. Bravo, lovely. Our next reader is Ernesto Garay.
Garay. It's okay.
Garay. Ernesto.
Thank you, Marisol, for inviting me to read today. And I am so excited to read, and thank you for everyone that's gone before me. Beautiful poetry and blessings. The first poem I'm going to read is about the Mockingbird. When I used to live in Sebastopol last summer, had the pleasure of listening to the Mockingbird at times at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning when I would stay up late to write. So here we go. The Mockingbird. This summer evening, I listen and hear that endless sweet music to the enchanted nightfall. Every trill, a tune, a rhythmic song ringing fills the breasts of brisk cold air. With glimmer and rejoice, hearing the baritone cadences pour into my quivering heart, magically turning sadness into flowers of affection, tissues of stress shot with songs of fire. Ah, me, an ear for song. The sweetness notes vibrate from her purty throat. Oh, sweet bird. I listen and feel my winged poet's little heart throb, warm and smooth as a distant flute, calling me forth, strip me clean, re-energized and cleansed, then covered me up with a cloth of jubilation. I'm alive. Thank you. Next poem I'm going to read is about the turkey. Every morning at last fall, we would be visited by turkey, and my son would always be asking, "Where are they? Where are they?" One morning, they appeared, and that same evening, I got inspired to dedicate a poem to the turkey. The turkey. Here comes the gathering of the wild turkey heading across the lot. They are coming calmly as they walk. They search in the dry grass and in between the rocks for nibbles to eat. Moreover, it must be a delight to pace willingly through the dense fog surrounding the oak trees and floating above the golden wheat fields. Then the morning rising sunlight, like the Mayan symbols of power and prestige. They move gracefully as the hands lift their dense toes tenderly. With such toes, here near the Laguna of Sebastopol, they could roam on as messengers of Mother Earth's descendants of those Mayan prized birds, or skip across the dirt or dance salsa. Yes, this morning, they get much closer to the house as the sounds of leaves crackle underneath their heavy toes, which are in the leaves like pelt of rain, then rapid droplets. Mi hijo gazes at them from the deck with a jubilant joy and ready to run to greet them. Rather than spreading their dark brown wings, the birds search hastily beside the trees, carrying a dignified history in their DNA. And the last poem that I'll read is about the hummingbird. And I learned by doing research about my ancestors, my Mayan ancestors, that hummingbirds for them symbolize, and for us symbolizes transition and change and love, of course. So here we go. Hummingbird. To love me is the path that I never thought of. Now that I see the reflection you gifted me with, I scream and shout as I feel the piercing pincers in my heart. Me, dream of being free, of embracing the potential of who I want to be. The hummingbird that I hold with my worn, rough hands, but maternally and softly as it desires. Now I know I earned my wings. It's time for I to soar. Seeing it buzz away, my memory reactivates self-discovery. Me, see the path to self-expression, keen awareness to always seek the sweetness, nectar. I would reach out the heights within me, not forgetting the birth of Mother Earth's first sunflower. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernesto. Golondrina, Golondrina. Lovely, very beautiful. Our next reader is Fernando Albert Salinas.
Great. All right. Well, let me get started then. Let's see. This first poem is called Coda. Plinking cans becoming curious, Round shots stream within the smooth bore barrel of his Red Ryder BB gun. Small boots trample urban forestry. He kneels in overgrown horseweed to hide, hears a stutter of clinks and clanks from the beak of a chirping song sparrow. He raises the barrel of his gun to point it at the sandy gray russet plumage perched above motionless and dry fires. The birds' bead eyes shoot at him, so the boy cocks his rifle, aims, then a crack and recoil. An explosion plumes from the bird's white bosom. Its feet clutch in reflex, body cascades back and hangs there upside down. When the child grows older, he will be ashamed to admit he shot the bird once more, not out of cruelty or grim fascination, perhaps pity. He couldn't stand to see it dangling as useless and lifeless as slung sneakers strung up on a telephone line. After tossing his Christmas gift into the garbage, he never pointed a gun at another living being. Thank you. So this next poem, I couldn't figure out how to write this poem. I have this fascination with owls, and I'll sit there at night and I'll screech to them, and then they talk back to me, and then they come back. And so essentially what I did is I just stayed up all night researching owls, and this is what came from it. I titled this poem Psychopomp. I am not one who can answer the screech of my mother. She cries for me in silent flight, ghost white and distant as stars. Velvety feathers split night. I often hear her hiss beyond my weakened sight. She will not be answered. I am not the darkness, may not touch her heart-shaped face. I am not the air, may not lift her soft fringe of wings trailing edge past pale moon. I am not the sky where she is embraced by endless expanse. I will not be more darkness. Thank you. I'll pass the hat, Jim.
Bravo. Beautiful work. I hope you all realize how rare it is to have a reading where all of the poems have a richness and a depth and a different vision. It's rare for me to have this experience, and I love it. Thank you all so much. Our next reader, who I haven't seen in group in months and in across the entire pandemic, but who I've missed dearly, is Lisha Garcia.
Thank you very much, Jim, for organizing this. And I'm so excited to be here today. And thank you very much to Marisol and Angel and everybody that helped me get on. I lost internet right before the reading. I was having a panic attack. So I'm so glad I'm here. So the poem I'm going to read first is a poem about coming from a very urban environment. So I'm originally from Mexico City, and arriving in Texas as a little girl, about 7 years old, and my mother being courted by a Texas rancher. So this is, and it's got birds in it, of course. So it's called, it's from my book, A Rope of Luna, Texas Courtship in the Rio Grande Valley. I search for the thermos of pink lemonade. The moccasin swims the surface of the pond at my back. Black satin poison and slither surprise for the white man courting my mother with a picnic on his ranch. She tells me about the dignity of the chaparral, the mesquite, as the land yields to a marsh with gray, brown, and yellow birds, anise, pygmy owls, and kiskadees. All this land for just a few cows who still cross the border in the Rio Grande Valley undisturbed. He talks about the grasshopper infestation. I tell myself, she is an artist, a ballet dancer from Mexico City. She will never bring me here to live. His pearly buttons shine with the light from the muddy water. He bends casually for the morning paper, only it's a rifle. He shoots the snake in the head, its opalescent white mouth flowers open for just an instant. Now a carcass of reddened back left for the vultures. So I have a vulture poem in there too. And he says to me, "Welcome to Texas, home of the swimmer snakes." My mother replies, "Ven, hija, come, daughter." So a lot of you know that in my culture, we associate birds with different kinds of spirits of our ancestors. And so this is one I wrote for my brother who passed away at the age of 40 from cancer. And he led a very unique life in that he was representing the US in incognito, sort of like a spy, but he was what they called a combat accountant in different war areas of the world and helped the United States, helped put in the logistics so the United Nations and the United States could bring in troops to these different countries. Brother Cardinal sings to my garden. Brother, I am dreaming your nightmares again, trapped in a circular script of war in Bosnia, Mogadishu, and Haiti. Countries that no longer remember your footsteps. Your terror is already cellared in the earth. Payment is in your bones. Sister prayers cannot reach you, Redbird. The asters have fallen. Your breast tattoo turns us blue. The blood cord that connects us to your voice has drowned. Now the measured silence between slow drum beats. Our dreams' hands are full of lavender. They massage your temples, salve the phantasms in your eyes. We pray the angels with fiery white swords cauterize your memory. Hermano, remake your horror into a new primeval Eden. Ask for fresh flesh, a black nut walnut cradle within a family that loves the smell of dark, newly turned soil and hummingbirds. Thank you. And this is a poem about the Seri peoples that I studied for a while. They are Native American tribe between Sonora and the ocean, and they border with Arizona and Baja California. And it's called The Seri Shaman Dreams the People. More dead Indians, a blackbird's call. Corn turns to stone, and we, the people of Atomachai, have lost our connection to the Great Spirit. Our dream names have scattered. The hummingbirds refuse to lighten our spirits on the breeze at night. The original people to come from the sea struggle as prey on a raptor's beak. It has been 5,000 years since we walked into the desert. The deer still graze, the coyotes still laugh, but we are shadow spiders under cottonwoods. The arrival of Spanish and English-speaking condors plucked the language from our tongues. We watched while they scalloped the earth into a leached cone, a copper mine that leaks, and turned the moon green, The ants now refuse to carry our burdens, one corn silk at a time. The toil of centuries dissolves into green and red feathers, grief mangled driftwood and sea foam. White butterflies flee the braids of our children. The only remaining sanctuary is under rocks tumbled by waves, a drum song beneath the left breast of a Seri woman. Thank you very much. It was so wonderful being with you today. Thank you, Jim, for inviting me. Thank you, Marisol and Angel. Thank you.
Thank you. Beautiful, Lisha. Lovely to hear you. Great.
Thank you.
So our next reader is Yasmina Wellinghoff, who does remarkable service for the community with Arts Alive San Antonio Weekly, whose great coverage of National Poetry Month has been incredibly important to attendance and to this Zoom world we're in, and who is a poet herself and wished to have a place to share, and here it is.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim. I would like to invite you all to subscribe to Arts Alive San Antonio. Very simple, very easy. Just go to Arts Alive San Antonio, put your email on the very bottom of the screen, and you are in. You're a subscriber, and it's free. So please check out Arts Alive San Antonio. Okay, well, I'm really glad to be here among all of these wonderful poets. I am not necessarily a bird person, I'm not a bird watcher, but in this one poem, I tell something that actually happened some years ago and that has stayed with me. So I finally wrote this little poem about it. It's called Mama Pigeon. On the tiny balcony on our dormitory, she had made her nest in a flower pot, bereft of bloom, but still filled with soft soil. She flew away and flew back, beak to beak, feeding her young, 5 small, quivering lumps, eagerly swallowing the mother's gifts. Their toy wings jerking back and forth helplessly. No bird song or flashy feathers, no twitter, no sound, in fact. Just a mama pigeon among many, doing what God has ordained for her kind. I got busy, I had classes. When cold dropped its hard fist on the world, next time I looked, she was still sitting on her babies, now small, grayish, frozen lumps. She sat a day, maybe longer, as is her duty, ordained by God for her kind. That's a poem that I kind of carried in with me for a while. I'm going to read another very short poem that was published actually in the Express News a year ago, more than a year ago, before the pandemic. And it's not about birds, but it is about the environment and survival and all of that. It's called Ashes of the Sun. What if we end up with ashes of the sun, burning the leaves, the lizards, the bugs? We, with no wings or fins, dispersed among rocks and caves, we, artists of the apocalypse, will be bestowing our spirits to the depths. That's that very short poem. And then one that I just kind of tossed off the other day, it's called Murmurations. You all know what that is, right? You're all bird people. Thousands invade the sky, carried on the dying evening light. Like a flock of dancers taking to the stage, each knows the moves and its proper place. as they perform for God and the human race the celestial ballet of faith and grace. That's it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Yasmina. Beautiful, beautiful. Wonderful voices again. The next reader is Jean Hackett, who I had the wonderful joy of having in a class we did this past fall, where we, by Zooming and between Zooms, walked in the woods, read Thoreau, wrote about what we saw, journaled and thought. A remarkable poet and naturalist who I've had the privilege of reading closely and look forward to seeing in print. This is Jean Hackett.
Yeah, and thank you, Jim, for providing us with that class. And also, he is one of the people I'm having, or I've had read along with Mobi Warren, manuscript of nature poetry that I've put together called Edge Species. So full-length manuscript. Okay, migrants in flight. They travel by night, when the air is cool, the wind constant, and those who would harm them asleep. They navigate by the star's grammar, in tonal shifts, Earth's magnetic field whispers, while communicating among themselves in coded clicks. They arrive from far away, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Guatemala, covering 500 miles in a single sprint, continuing onward, though 40 of every 100 never reach our shores. They journey north yearly to escape heat and starvation, to give birth in the balmy Texas spring and fill niches the locals eschew. Once their seasonal work is done, they return to Central America. But while they are here, those lucky enough to spot one joyously exclaim, "Look, a golden-cheeked warbler." Okay, as Jim said, I'm a naturalist, and sometimes I kind of geek out on scientific things. And so this is one of my geeky scientific poems, sort of. How to build a feather. To make a feather, fly backwards, then descend into Jurassic jungles. Watch small, hollow-bone theropods hop across time, bodies changing to channel heat from within, surreptitiously sprouting bristled filaments for warmth, not flight. Primitive, but precluding the possibility of birds without a feather. Eventually, other forms of fringe encircle the ancients, branched and angled for gliding. Sadly, Archaeopteryx could never sail from sea to shining sea. Only when muscle joined bone at a point of power, when powered flight, powered evolutionary wizardry, did birds achieve escape velocity. Fine feathers making the magic of flapping and swooping, flitting and hovering, lassoing air currents to cross continents. Origin stories meld in the mind like a bird in the hand. Consider the organics and aerodynamics needed for takeoff. Begin with patches of thickened cells coded for placodes, structures which spring into scales on an alligator's hide. Add a central shaft, flexible and strong, line with aligned barbs and barbules interlocked by hooks, features found in all feathers. Then design the verges for both form and function. Down, hugging the body with soft, loose threads to hold heat. Pennaceous feathers, stiff, firmly attached to each wing, quilled ligament. Asymmetrical to prevent twisting in flight. Tail feathers spread into a ruddered fan and bodies streamlined by contour feather shingles, with sensory phyloplumes scattered across the skin like twitchy wires, and insulating semiplumes to underline it all. Careful engineering for the miracle of flight. Okay, and I think the last one I'm gonna read is one that I wrote in Jim's class. I spend a lot of time at Hardberger Park. I live across the street. And we have a lot of red-shouldered hawks there. And this is about one of those guys. Hawk in autumn. The red-shouldered hawk firmly grasps a leafless branch, halfway up an almost bare persimmon, establishes a strategic lookout with unencumbered views and flight paths into the golden dry savanna. Motionless, he perches, head and wings collapsed onto his torso, insulation against the blustery November sky. Martial-faced, he turns westward, where brazier-hot sunlight can warm him from behind, dance camouflage patterns into feathers, dappled rust, cream, and brown. Binocular vision precisely tuned, he scans distant fields, confident in his ability to locate targets, quickly bringing down the kill. Watching in awe, I wonder, what presence does this raptor sense at ground zero, where brambled foliage rattles and roars with every laughing winter gust? How can he discern the scramble of rodent footfalls from weeds convulsing in the wind, or catch the frightened glint of a rabbit's eye among speckled shards of glass and mica? Suddenly, talons relax their clenched grip with a stealthy twitch. The hawk launches but stays low as he glides across the savanna, loudly announcing his arrival in a series of boastful cries. Melodious songs to human ears, banshee shrieks to small creatures quivering within the brush. Thank y'all.
Bravo, bravo. And don't anyone keep you ever from geeking out. You are hereby allowed to geek out on any occasion. Please, geek out, geek away. Our next reader lives out in Lytle where I live as well, and has often been out here at Mitchell Lake with us when we were doing this live, and has a remarkable group of writing in which birds have a ominous and powerful presence. This is Genie Sanders.
Okay, this is called Honing. And I wrote this poem because I actually did see vultures circling over the downtown San Antonio skyline. Vultures circling over the downtown San Antonio skyline makes you wonder who died. Thousands of years of genetic honing circle with the vultures as they lazily drift. Will they drop down on some dead thing in front of a shopping tourist? Or is their destination some small speck that pulls at their heart? How will someone react to the scent of prehistoric nature dropping their black feathered selves onto some ancient modern street? And this is the next one. It's for Lisha LaVilla-Havelin, who is a great friend of mine and who is a fiber artist and has a ritual of, if she finds birds where she lives that have died, she buries them under a certain tree. And so this is Lisha and her birds. Perhaps it is an unconscious ritual of it. You placing of the winged bodies into the earth under the mesquite tree, beside the tree roots, under the bright Texas sky. For the birds must go just so, a little to the left of the tree, a little to the right. Wrapped so carefully in material chosen from other occasions. Then out of the sun into the shelter of familiar place, your pretty hands moving the thread of creating over cloth, forming ideas with each dip of those hands, stitching, pulling, shifting, transferring. Bodies of thought become bodies of threaded flight as they move just so, a little to the left, a little to the right. And this one is a banquet. A wake of vultures feeds loudly on some creature's mistake, pecking at their nearest black vulture neighbor. Mine, hisses the feeding vultures like a chorus of snakes. As he stands back watching one smaller turkey vulture mumbles, it's really mine. I smelled inside at this banquet, first way back there on the road. But these greedy black vultures think they are the kings of death. If you ask me, his neighboring turkey vulture remarked, using his stinky vulture breath, black vultures are just what they like to eat, hogs, nothing but hogs. And with that, the much smaller turkey vultures shook their beaks as they waited for the leftovers. And then this last poem is called Cadence. Listening to the birds in my backyard, the noise they make seems to find the rhythm of my heart. How many thousands of years have humans stopped to listen to just such a sound? The Carolina parakeet, the passenger pigeon, have long disappeared from our earth. No one has heard them singing for centuries. No heart rhythm beats to their song. What if one day we wake to total quiet because all birds have vanished, taking the rhythm of birdsong away from our diminished hearts? Okay, that's all for me. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Jeanie. Thank you so much. I love that poem for Lisha. I don't know why. Well, you know why. But
Yeah.
Our next reader and I go back a long way and across much life, much time. Another member of the writing group who we've not been together now for a while, but always good to hear and see and listen to the amazing Ignacio Magaloni.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Marisol. Thank you, Audubon Society. Thank you so much. And what beautiful poems. It's just amazing. And this reminds me of some of the themes that about existence and in relation to the poems. I always think of them as creating the day, being very busy in the mornings, creating the day. And I was trying to write a poem about that. Then something happened. So this other poem, actually a prayer, an Aztec prayer, and actually pre-Aztec prayer to Tlaloc, that involves birds also. And I was thinking of reading it and thought, no, it's a little too grim. And then something happened. And so this poem is titled Death of Our Cardinal, Rituals. A prayer to Tlaloc, Sullivan's translation, a supplication to the gods delivered by fire priests, made during droughts and ensuing famines at Tenochtitlan. They would incant passionately, and the children, the little ones, those who barely walk, those who crawl, those still on the ground making little piles of earth with broken bits of pottery, all of them are hollow-eyed. Everyone is gazing upon torment. No one has been overlooked. All living things know anguish and affliction. The troupial and the roseate spoonbill drag themselves along. They topple over and lie prostrate on their backs weakly opening and closing their beaks. Green views of lives lived, prayers said for creation and pain. The prayer chose itself to be said this bright spring morning. I wish it had been no reason for tears after our sweet dog hunted down a nestling. My wife removed the body from its jaws and placed it in a shoebox with grass and leaves to better look for life signs. I finished the work, sharing the bird covered in its new feathers with a sunny patch of bare earth so her parents could cease their searching chirps. We know how in the heart, love will never stop calling out her name. Nearly an hour later, enough precaution allowed flashes of red and pale brown. The parents swooped from a fence and low bush to find their little life was gone. I took the body away from view, but saw her mother on a tree branch taking us in before leaving without hesitation. In a good spot beside our home, I dug a V-shaped grave with a spade and arranged the little body with all the dignity I could offer, her head straight, wings against her body. And the prayer then says, "O our Lord, let it not go on like this. Let there be fullness and abundance for all. And they shall know the house of the sun, where the sun is amused, where his praises are sung, where the nectar of the sundry sweet and fragrant flowers is sipped, and the little child, the tot, still a chick, still a mite, not sensible of anything, as jade, as turquoise, shall go to heaven." And I thank you all very much. It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you, Ignacio. Always, always good to hear you.
Bye-bye.
Our next reader is a student of mine in with a group that has been Zooming, but will return soon at Beale House, and we're all looking forward to it. And a fine, fine poet, Patricia Keoughan.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here and appreciate this opportunity that you all have provided to do this. I apologize, I had to move. My neighbor decided, I loved being outside, but my neighbor decided to mow, and I was afraid that it would not work very well, so I moved inside. So I'm going to read 3 rather brief poems, but the first one is one that relates to a recent experience. And the second 2 after that are my happy place on Sanibel Island that I'm reminded of whenever I think about the birds there and the places that I've enjoyed there. So including the Ding Darling Wildlife Refuge, if none of you have ever been there, it's absolutely wonderful. So I'll read this first one called Joy in the Morning. The goldfinches came today. It's been a year, and now they're here with bright yellow breasts and black tuxedo tails. At the Monte Vista house, where I used to live, they joined cedar waxwings, white-winged dove, and raucous jays, sipped from antique fountain, snapped red berries from pyracantha bush, bent branches draped against weathered fence. This day, this happy day, long awaited 10 months of pandemic days, they appear joyously. I blurt out, "They're here!" I giggle with glee to see them swirl, a light feeder like winged sunshine, slice of dawn, promised light. And this next one is titled Ibis. I was fortunate enough to live on a little lake there in Sanibel where the ibis would come in the evening and take off in the morning. And this is a poem about that experience. Ibis. Lilac hue gels to indigo. Veils of ibis wings flutter, wave. Freshly laundered sheets sail down to mangrove boughs. White wings fold, daylight quells. Curtains close, await destined dawn. Sunrise greets rosy morn, arched beaks unfurl, feathers rouse, wings stretch, open wide, flutter, wave, rake seagrave and mangrove leaves, choreographed, jeté, ibis rise, punctuate monotone blue skies. Dusk returns. Celestial clouds, snowy wings drift gracefully to branch and limb. Lambent Suzhou lanterns converge, hope and mystery. And this last one is titled, What Bends Your Knee? Afternoon's bright light splashes spiky palms, lengthy shadows glide, slither, stretch, caress silver strand, whirl, twirl, pirouette, take their final bow. Earth's brightest star trails wispy veils of pink and lilac clouds, then swallowed by a blackened sea. Did you catch the flash of green? Light succumbs to dark. Violet sky seduces argent moon. Planets and a billion stars punctuate a velvet night. Crickets, stridulation grates. Owls, baritone becalms. Palm fronds chafe in docile breeze. Waves curtsy, kiss the shore. At evensong, no need for rosary. Prayers nest in herons' spindly legs along still water's edge, among leathery reeds. Gleam in Anhinga's rosy eyes. Stream from croak of double-crested cormorant. Soar on wide-stretched osprey wings. Find solace with the gods. It is enough to make me weep, catch my breath, bow my head. Both dark of night and light of day bend my knee. So many ways to pray. Thank you very much.
Luscious. Thank you, Patricia. Beautiful work. Oh, have we left any birds out? Is there a bird with no canaries, no penguins, but you know, I often at this point in the reading look for the birds we've left out just to say, if anybody has a penguin, let me know. And if anyone has a, but no, all right. Dopey birds, penguins. Grackles, Marisol says, grackles. I'm sure there are grackle poems out there. Our next reader is Rachel Jennings, who, as I have said before when I greeted her, whose poems you will find gracing the pages of La Voz de Esperanza this month and the month before, the current issue and the Poetry Month issue. The poet whose work I always read with great interest and learn from and listen to. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you. I have two brief poems to read today. The first poem is called Balloon One. I was thinking about the dangers to birds, and one of those dangers, of course, is the debris we find littered on the ground. So this is called Balloon One. some soul's dearest wish, embodied as a birthday balloon, released heavenward like a prayer, now appears in late winter's grizzled grass as I take my daily walk. Who knows how the balloon met its end? Torn in treetops or barbed wire perhaps, or clawed, pawed, picked at. Now the dusty little rag lies among beer cans, confetti, New Year's fireworks, debris. Less than a corpse, this reddish flap of plastic resembles a strip of skin, the entrails of some animal, the original lip and twisted neck, like a belly button, a nipple turned inside out, the balloon not else recognizable. Most likely, its other bits sit in the guts of a bird that rots too in the dirt. And then the second point here is very brief. This one I actually wrote some years ago in Austin, because I lived in Austin for a good many years. Earlier we were mentioning grackles, so I'll include the grackles. This poem is entitled Stephen F. Austin. He loathed the garbled calls and the ghostly iridescence of the inscrutable grackles. He wanted them to fly southward, so he fired the cannon. Thank you.
I love it. I love it. And we got our grackle there. And our last reader is Tammy Melody Gomez. And Tammy's been out in the backyard for a long time, almost as backlit as I, although we can see her face, whereas I have disappeared into shadow from the very beginning. So thank you, Tammy.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to be here. Appreciate your hospitality and your invitation. My set today is dedicated to all the canaries in coal mines and other lost, abandoned, encaged, threatened, and sacrificed flying, floating, winged creatures. May the ghosts of their song echo through the ages. Poem number 100 of 365. I weave tender bits of straw into my promised nest, embed crushed tinfoil onto the rim to reflect sunlight into eyes of unwanted suitors. You, above all others, insist to visit my eggs, crowd us in our tree perch, and I almost consent to let you. At the outset, I detested the scent of pine cones and would have nothing to do with nesting here. But Mount Sopris is where my blue jay days need to be lived, and so far, I'm accommodating well. I see you watching from the other tree. The canopy houses so many of us. I wonder how we can keep our bird songs from clashing. Fly, fly to the upper branch, spill down your gifts. We still lack the red silk yarn for this nest. Poem number 9 of 365. I stepped onto my front stoop and voices called to me from a porch on the other side. Is this your cat? It's friendly. I paused my thinking, squinted at the fur in the distance, and they offered, it's wearing a collar. No, my cat wears no collar, I told them, and swinging my gaze to the north, down the street, I noticed 2 hens pecking away. Are those your chickens? Those are vultures. There are 3, my neighbors explained, and to my amazement, I peeled my eyes better and indeed saw carnivorous birds on the street. Doggedly, they worked at fresh carcass, the small furry corpus of a black alley cat. When an auto swooped down their way, they took flight, showing wingspans of at least my own height. They flew around, encircling this historic barrio, casting elongated shadows upon rooftops, sidewalks, smaller animals. I twitched a little, braced myself on the neighbor's porch, wondering what code of symbolic meaning to paint upon this site. Carnivorous birds upon my street, making banquet in destruction? There are 2 empty holes a little further down, and the disembowelment happens largely at night. There used to be houses where the big holes gape, pecked and disappeared by unflinching machines. My little barrio is getting its body devoured, and the ones who make this happen do not meet my eyes with theirs. I do not know how to stop them, arrest their shadows darkening my hood. Twice, I tried to photograph the vultures as they flew over the house across the street, but their paths were jagged, unpredictable. Developers are also destroyers, urban and unaccountable, who single-mindedly prey on those of us who are afraid even in the light of day. Poem 336 of 365. Whizzing around my house is that flying thing which you might call a bird. A ver qué pasa, a ver qué pasa. But inside that bird with its cardboard beak and construction paper wings is another thing, itself a flying creature of smaller bulk, and perhaps even that thing is a facsimile of something that it cannot ever be, and what lies within is something smaller yet, with wings of its own that flap in darkness and perhaps in light, and it, that thing on the inside of that fake flying bird in my house, is what I want to identify for what it could be. Volando adentro la casa, volando adentro la casa, volando adentro la casa, a ver qué pasa, a ver qué pasa. The greatest creature of love, or maybe the strangest creature of evil, or perhaps it is both at once. When it stops gliding over our heads, when it makes a choice to land, then we shall all know and recognize. I trust that it is a good thing, an honest animal, which merely plays strange under a sheath of paper and twine. A ver qué pasa, a ver qué pasa. It is only teasing to be cute and hope soon to share in an amicable bond here in my parlor of laughter and passion. I succeed at removing masks from preening creatures who long to finally show their true faces of love, of goodwill. We will stare at length into each other's blinking, unadorned eyes as the windows open and there's a moment to spring free. Volando adentro la casa, volando adentro la casa, volando adentro la casa, a ver qué pasa, a ver qué pasa. Poem 63 of 365. I am shivering back in Dallas, and the scratchy upholstered seat on flight 415 now seems so long ago. As I step up to a glass partition that breaks some of the cold chill wind as I wait for the last train at night. I am alone, there are no other people, and it is the stars and parking lot lights that keep me warm inside and bright. Until I step up to a red lump on the platform, inert and breathless, a red-combed cardinal in its death. He must have made a mortal mistake, slapping into the glass walls that now make my weight sufferable, although I begin trembling for a new reason. I step up and stare down at its perfect plumage, seemingly primped for a burial. Yet I know that I and he and maybe you and all abandoned souls on the tarmacs and platforms of this world often get overlooked and sometimes stepped over, despite the brave coos and beloved chirps we once freely shared from the highest of treetops, unencumbered by plate glass and late train schedules. And so I decide to sing. I sing to the bird, to the twinkling sky and the parking lot lights and the coin machine fixtures. And there is no sad suffering waiting anymore. Thank you.
Bravo, bravo, gorgeous. And I love the music, singing with it. And you realize we've done it. We have done it. You all have been amazing, gorgeous. I'm going to read October Ode, and then I'm going to ask Marisol to play the Mobi Warren puppeteering videotape. But this is a tiny, We didn't have a goose, so this is the goose, and what can I tell you? October Ode. Hay yellow field open in the sun, Van Gogh brushstrokes surrounded by cactus, mesquite, but no ocotillo, full moon, harvest moon, wide-eyed look into darkness, into that same field, red-orange glow goes down. One lone goose honks, whistles, left behind until one wind blows. Cartoon mouth of cloud, wide open in an O, catches the goose and often a crow and blows them home, just so you know. That's October Ode. And can we, Marisol, are you going to put up the video of?
Do that. So Mobi, who many of you know, used to organize this event for many years with Jim, is, in addition to poetry and citizen science and other and activist stuff that she does, has put a lot of energy over the last pandemic year into puppeteering. Actually, Mobi, I don't know if you want to say anything about your work. Are you still here, Mobi?
I'm here. Just a minute. I'm here. No, the puppets have stolen me during the pandemic year and have set my heart on a new path. So what I've made and what Marisol is going to show is a little puppet service announcement to let you all know about the upcoming City Nature Challenge. But I'm available for puppeteering should you need a puppet at any poetry event.
Sweet. So let's watch that. Just one sec.
Oh, hello. My name's Neoman. I've been spending all afternoon outside here in San Antonio, Texas, my home, taking photos to learn all about the animals and plants that live all around me, right in my own backyard. And then I upload those photos onto the iNaturalist app on my phone, and I learn about the names and their habits. And oh, I learned so much. Just within a mile or two of my house, I can find over 100 different species. But let me tell you, I'm really getting excited about the CNC coming up again in April. Last year, I took about 120 photos of insects and birds and plants, all kinds. And then I uploaded them onto iNaturalist, and I think I identified over 70 different species. But I plan to do even more this year. CNC. Oh, you'd like to see some of the photos I took today? Well, sure. Here, let me get closer so you can have a better look at my phone. There, I'm going to put on a little slideshow for you. Oh, hello, Sleepy Arm. Why, hello, Coccinello, Sir Lady Beetle. It's a beautiful day, isn't it? Oh, yes, I've found so much nectar. I've been crunching on aphids. Ah, yes, you are not a vegan like me. Did you encounter that human girl that is always out with her camera? I did, and I tried to give her my very best profile so she could get a good photo. Yeah, I tried doing the same. But did you hear she kept singing a song like, CNC, CNC, I can hardly wait for the CNC. I did. She seemed very excited about it. I know, but what is the CNC? Well, I really don't have any idea. But you know, I was thinking, she's a human who loves learning about plants and animals, and she seems especially fond of insects. Yeah, the best, right? So I'm thinking maybe CNC has something to do with plants and animals. Maybe it stands for Copper Lily, Northern Mockingbird, Coyoteo. CNC. Oh, how about this? Click beetle, nopal, cowpen daisy, my favorite. Yeah, how about cardinal, nighthawk, Carolina chickadee? Oh my goodness. But which one of those is the CNC that human is singing about? I have no idea. Well, did you enjoy my slideshow? You know, sometimes when I'm observing little insects, I almost feel like I can understand what they're saying to each other. And this may sound ridiculous to you, but I just came across a lady beetle and a sleepy orange butterfly, and it seemed to me that they were listing all kinds of other creatures and plants, and they all began with the letters C, N, C. Wonder if they're part of the City Nature Challenge. City Nature Challenge. I hope you'll join me in April. Bye.
All right, Mobi.
Thank you to all the readers, to Marisol, to Angel, to Mitchell Lake and Deceleration and the Stone and Stream. Thank you to all of you for your words and for caring about birds and finding their measure and their meaning and their sound and their sight in your poems. Till next year when we hopefully can meet in person under the birds. Thank you.